Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel. Its-A-Mii here, and today we're doing a review, not for a game, but for the Nintendo Switch 2 here. I have spent a lot of time over the past 2 weeks with this console, and I have to say, early impressions, I suppose, for a console I'll be spending the next 8 years with. This is kind of my dream device. There are some issues, and I have had a couple of different technical difficulties with it, but overall, this has been an overwhelmingly positive console launch for me in terms of the console experience itself, both docked and in handheld, the new features like game chat, which were a huge surprise to me, but also the games. I mean, the games are really what matter, and the games that are on offer here are very nice. So that's what we're getting into today, my review of the Nintendo Switch 2 after 2 weeks with this beautiful, beautiful console. Okay, so there are so many different ways I could start this off with. I think the first thing I really want to highlight is just the fact that I already love the Nintendo Switch. I think Nintendo having a hybrid console really was like the ultimate form of what they were doing with their handhelds, but also their home consoles. Having a home console on the go experience was always something that I really loved about the Nintendo Switch, and even though the Switch was certainly a very much a Gen 1 version of what would become now the Switch 2, and maybe we'll see more iterations in the future, it still was really good. It had more issues at launch than the Switch 2 had, in my opinion, in terms of like the screen size and the Joy-Con size especially. The Nintendo Switch 2 really alleviates a lot of those issues because they have been able to iterate, even with the OLED, where they added an Ethernet port to the dock. That's just stock on the Switch 2 now. So over the course of the Switch generation leading up to Switch 2, they've really been able to listen to feedback, I feel like, and make a console that's, for me, as someone who already loved the Nintendo Switch, is just an evolution of the Nintendo Switch, just way, way better. I was honestly a little worried that it would be too big in my hands after, long playing sessions, and there was a day where I played like 2.5 hours of Mario Kart in a handheld, and by the end of that, I was like, okay, I kind of want to put this thing down, because it is quite a bit bigger than the Nintendo Switch. However, it's not really an issue. I still wish they had done some more ergonomic, like grips on the back. Of course, you can buy accessories for that, but overall, it feels very comfy in my hands. It's certainly much more comfortable than the Nintendo Switch was, which was fine, but it would cramp up my hands while playing. This feels so much better in my hands than the Nintendo Switch did, and of course, a big part of that is just it being bigger, but also because the screen's bigger, which is really nice. That means the Joy-Con are also bigger. Now, we'll talk about the Pro Controller at the end of the video, but the Joy-Con are so much better on this console. I have played a lot of Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, so I have a lot of time playing with these Joy-Con, both like this in the grip as a mouse control, and it is a night and day difference in terms of like comfortability when it comes to the Switch 2 Joy-Con versus the Switch 1 Joy-Con. And of course, they have new features packed in there, like the mouse controls, which are really cool. I haven't played too many games that like really take advantage of them just yet. I know there's like Civ 7 and Nobunaga, those are RTS games, so of course they use them, but also like Cyberpunk and Rune Factory, those support the mouse controls, and I haven't put too much time into them, but the fact that there is these mouse controls, and it's just so seamless for a lot of games where you literally just, let's say you're holding it, and then you put it down on the table, and it just immediately recognizes that, it knows that. In some cases, you have to go to the settings like Cyberpunk, but in a game like Welcome Tour, it just says, hey, put it down, and it's like, okay, let's do that now. I love the mouse controls, I love the Joy-Con, and that's coming from someone who primarily uses a Pro Controller. On my Switch 1, I haven't used the base Joy-Con standalone in a very long time. However, with the Switch 2, having the added mouse controls, there's a reason now. There's a reason for me to take the Joy-Con off of my Switch 2 when I'm not playing it in handheld mode. When I'm playing docked, I can use those controllers for certain functionality that the Pro Controller can't offer. And listen, I love the Pro Controller, and for me, as someone who is primarily going to be putting time onto this console for the next, 8 years, once again, like, that's a worthwhile investment for me, but I actually don't know if it's worth recommending to you because the Joy-Con are so good, especially when you put them in the grip. Like, the Joy-Con, they're not a nuisance anymore. They actually size them up, spec them up, and they feel like you're using a real controller now, as opposed to the Switch 1 Joy-Con, which didn't really do it for me. And I just love the display on this thing. It's a lot bigger than the Switch OLED was, which was already quite a bit bigger than the Switch 1 screen was. Of course, it wasn't physically bigger, but there was less bezel around the screen. This is an LCD display, while the Switch OLED, of course, is an OLED display. And I know a lot of people were like worried that, oh, it wasn't going to be good enough. It wasn't going to feel as good as the Switch OLED screen. I'm telling you right now, Of course, there are differences here, and if you really appreciate those deeper blacks in an OLED panel, then yeah, you're gonna prefer the OLED screen probably, but the gulf in difference is not as much as you would expect. The screen on the Nintendo Switch is so clean, especially with it being 1080 versus the 720 on the Switch OLED. Having HDR on here is really nice, 120 hertz, of course. Like, the screen is better than I ever expected it to be, considering pre-launch here, and like, oh, it's not an OLED, that's a negative thing. Honestly, I don't think it really matters. I would take a 1080p display over that any day, plus having HDR, plus having 120 hertz display. Like, that's, the screen is really nice. The console itself feels really nice. I love playing in handheld with this thing. Big caveat to that, though, this is our first like major negative, I guess, is the battery life. The battery life is really bad, and I hope with future revisions they fix that. You can get, at most, I would say 3 hours out of it, and that's like on the higher end. I've had times where I'll be playing and Mario Kart will, you know, drain it in like 2 hours even. So it really just depends on what you're playing, if how intensive it is, how much that fan starts running, because sometimes you will hear the fan running. So the battery life is certainly a drawback, especially coming off of the Switch OLED, which has a much better battery life than even the base Switch. But yeah, I mean, overall, playing the actual console itself feels really good. And then, you know, of course, has the whole Switch gimmick where you put it in the dock and you just pick it up right there. I can't really think of any improvements actually, other than, like I said, having the Ethernet port on the dock, but the OLED had that, so the dock experience is basically the same. However, the handheld experience, in my opinion, has been greatly improved despite the battery life. I said the same thing in a lot of my unboxings and early impressions of all of the third-party games videos I did over the past 2 weeks, but it's still weird seeing a Nintendo console be on the level of like a PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox Series S, in that range, right? Because we've been so used to having the Wii U, and then the Switch was kind of just a souped up Wii U, and the visual fidelity of games on Nintendo platforms has remained the same for the better part of like 13 years, right? So to finally have a graphical leap again on a Nintendo console is so nice, and I'm really impressed so far with the third-party ports I've played. There are some that are less impressive than others, but even playing Cyberpunk at 40 FPS, and it's like consistent 40, I didn't really notice any frame drops. Like, that is so nice to get out of a $450 handheld. The Steam Deck certainly can't do that. So, yeah, the power of this thing is better than I expected in terms of the performance from third parties. Of course, Nintendo games, also seeing them in 4K and seeing what they're really doing with that. It's funny looking back, we looked at the Mario Kart teaser that was in the Switch 2 reveal, and at the time, a lot of people were like, oh, it doesn't look that much better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Oh my goodness, how wrong we were. Mario Kart World looks so good. Seeing Nintendo take advantage of this upgrade in power, not just in terms of visuals and resolution and frame rate and everything, but also in how they're expanding their game worlds, having the 24 players in the track, having more open world stuff, of course, you know, better draw distance, all that is really improving the Nintendo first party experience, even with games like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. I mean, those patches that they released for those games are just incredible, but also all of these Switch 1 games that got free patches, I wasn't expecting those to be as impressive as they are. Scarlet and Violet is the main talking point. People are losing their minds over that. I actually haven't checked that one out myself yet, but stuff like Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom, those 4K resolution bumps for those games, or I saw a video comparing 3D World and Odyssey, like, it's a game changer. If you have a pre-existing huge library of Switch games, which I do, this console is a dream, because not only is it getting all of these great new games, it also improves all of your old games, or games that maybe you missed already on the Switch 1, in a way that, frankly, I haven't really seen before, even as someone who, I bought a PS5 Pro. Or like when you play a PS4 game on a PS5, yes, there are enhancements, some games are unlocked and they'll run at better frame rates. The enhancements that certain Switch 1 games are getting for Switch 2 are greater than any jump I saw from like a PS4 to PS5 like backwards compatibility boost. It is so impressive how much a simple resolution bump and frame rate boost can do for Nintendo's first party games, because they already have such a great art style. It really was just the hardware holding them back from looking like truly modern, like really beautiful games. And they already look good on Switch 1, but having that bump frame rate, having the you know, resolution for a game like Age of Calamity, which ran so poorly on Switch 1, that is a game that I'm so happy runs better on Switch 2. Like, the backwards compatibility stuff is something that I wasn't really expecting, to be honest. Nintendo traditionally doesn't do patches like that. We've never really seen them do that before, but even for the games that don't have patches, seeing them run better, it's been fun just testing out all my random Switch games and just seeing like, okay, does this one run better? Does this one have an unlocked frame rate? So the new first-party and third-party games running really well is awesome, but also the old games getting boosted is just something that I wasn't expecting, and I'm really, really happy. As a huge Switch collector and gamer, like, the Switch 2 inherently immediately became extremely valuable to me as someone who still plays on Switch. Now my library is just better than ever. Okay, here is something that was like a crucial issue with the Nintendo Switch 1. And admittedly, right now, there's not much on there, so there's really not much point to even check it right now unless you're looking for Switch 1 games. But the eShop. The eShop was one of my biggest issues with the Nintendo Switch 1. As time went on, as the years passed, the eShop kept getting slower and slower. It was a dread to load up the eShop, not because of all of the AI slop games. That's a whole other issue. I really still hope they fix that, but because of how slow it literally was just to load or do anything on the eShop. When I got the Switch 2, I unboxed it and I did my first time setup video. The first thing I did was go to the eShop, and the eShop runs so much better. I can't believe they fixed it. I really didn't believe they would, because it's still running like on the same backend build or whatever, web browser thing, and it's just, you know, running on Switch 2 now, but it actually loads. It loads like immediately. There might be a time or two where it takes a second, but the trailers load fine, the screenshots load fine. It's not a dread to go to the eShop and just look at games that are coming out or recently released or adding things to your wish list. That is something that I really did not like about the Switch 1, and I'm so happy they fixed it on Switch 2. They just need to, you know, filter out all of the garbage stuff that's on there now, and the eShop will be better than ever. I mean, it already is better than ever, but it's still not quite there, but I really am happy that they improved the eShop quite a bit. Something I really wasn't expecting to use at all on Switch 2 was game chats. When they announced this back in April, I was like, I don't know, man. I'm so accustomed to using Discord when talking to friends while playing games at this point that I really just kind of didn't think it was something that I would be using that much, but I was happy they were adding it. It was finally time for Nintendo to have proper party chats for when you're playing with friends, and this is something that I have, to my surprise, used almost every single day. I really am impressed with game chat and how seamless it is. There's just really no barrier to getting into it anymore, where even on PlayStation 5, I feel like when I join a party, first of all, the DualSense's built-in controller microphone isn't very good. The Switch 2's microphone is certainly better, especially considering it's on the console itself, and I sit like 10 feet away from the dock. The microphone and like the cancellation tech they have in there for getting rid of background noise is really impressive. The ease of access of just inviting your friends, joining, having all 4 people share their screens, that's something that even with like the low frame rate, I wasn't expecting to like that, but it's actually so nice because, once again, on PlayStation and Xbox, I believe on Xbox, you can share your screen, but the way it's set up, it just isn't quite as intuitive. It isn't quite as seamless as it is on Switch. I mean, you literally press the C button, you invite your friends, and then you're in there. There are a couple of things I want them to change about this. I want them to make it so you can invite friends after the party has already been created. For some reason, you can't do that. That's really weird. So they need to change that, and they also need to make it so you can default to a certain screen setting when you get into the game chat. Right now, it defaults to having the 4 screens and your icons on the bottom. Make it so I can default to just having it be full screen. But also, I mean, once again, like having the game chat there and the screen sharing is so cool. I really wasn't expecting that. But even when I'm playing games with friends, like let's say I was in a call with them and they were playing Mario Kart World and I was playing Welcome Tour or Bravely Default, and I can share my screen to them so easily. Before, I would usually be in a Discord call, and because I have a capture card, because I do YouTube, I would share it that way. Now, even my friends that don't do YouTube and don't have a capture card, it's so easy for them to just share their screen, and that's really cool. I really am kind of blown away by game chat. There are some issues with it, don't get me wrong, but it is much more useful than I anticipated. I thought I would still be using Discord when I play games online. That has not been the case. Okay, I do want to address this, so I think this might be my biggest issue with the Switch 2 so far. I haven't really fiddled with it too much to try and fix it, so that's something I certainly need to do. However, I have had quite a few Wi-Fi issues with it, and I've seen other people posting similar things about the Switch 2's Wi-Fi chip having certain compatibility issues with certain routers and how they connect. But I will be playing a game, and I will randomly disconnect from the game chat or from the Mario Kart World server or whatever. And what's weird is if I just like refresh it, it'll reconnect me. So I'm getting like this DNS error that every 30 minutes or so, it'll just like reset. I need to like refresh it really quick. It's not a deal breaker because I can refresh it really quick. It's not a big deal, but I don't know what that is. It must be something with the Wi-Fi chip because I have seen other people mentioning it. And if you have a direct connection, which once again the dock does have, which is really nice, that issue isn't there. I thought it might be my router, but I've never had this issue before with any other device in my house, including the Switch 1. So there is something wrong with the Wi-Fi chip in the Switch 2. It seems, once again, I need to mess with my router settings and see if I can fix it through that because I mean, having the direct connection there certainly is ideal, especially for online games, but I do like playing it in handheld, and when you're doing game chat in handheld too, like that works really well. So the DNS errors I keep getting are certainly annoying. I don't know if that's truly a widespread issue. Like I said, I've seen a couple people mentioning it, but I did want to bring it up in this video because for me, in terms of really big issues I've had, I mean, I don't even think that's a huge issue because, like I said, it's an easy fix, but the Switch 2 is so good. That's one of the only problems I've had with it so far. I did also want to talk about the Pro Controller a little bit more because I wasn't really planning on doing a review for this, but this controller, oh man. I have been an advocate for back buttons on controllers for so long. I love my DualSense Edge, which has the back pedals. These aren't quite as comfortable as the DualSense paddles because they are like recessed into the mold here, but still having a Nintendo controller that has back buttons, and it still is pretty comfortable here because it's still just your middle finger locked on there. Having these back buttons and once again, the ease of access to customizing them on the Switch 2 is so nice. I'm using it for every game. Every game, I immediately, I'm like, okay, what can I use the GL and GR buttons for on here? The way you set them up is you don't go to the system settings anymore. You can still reconfigure buttons. You can even reconfigure the C button if you don't want to use game chat for whatever reason. But the way you do it for the GL and GR buttons is you literally, in any given game, you just hold down the home button and it pops up with the option to configure them for that specific game, which I really love. On the DualSense Edge, you have like 5 profiles, I think. Maybe you can have a little bit more than that, but it's certainly more cumbersome to set up. On this, you literally just hold down the button and you do it real quick. It takes like 2 or 3 seconds and you're done, and it's on a game-by-game basis, so you can have different profiles for every game that you're playing. It's awesome. I love the Pro Controller. I will say I've played, I think, like 40 hours of Mario Kart World at this point. I have charged this controller once, and that's just Mario Kart World. I use this for all of my handheld gameplay videos. I've only had to charge it once. So the battery life, I don't know if it's exactly as good as the Switch 1 Pro Controller, but it's certainly not far off if it is worse or better or whatever. The battery life on this thing is incredible. So $85 is a lot for a controller, but it's a dream controller. The way the sticks feel also, and this applies to the Joy-Con, I don't know what they did, but there's something smooth about these things that I've never felt in another controller. It feels good. This is easily the best controller Nintendo has ever made. I don't even think it's close. So yeah, I mean, the Nintendo Switch 2, man, I am going to be doing so many videos on this console over the next several years. I'm going to be doing videos on basically every game as they come out. If you've been following the channel, you already know I covered every launch title or every physical launch title on the platform. So of course, check out those videos for individual game impressions. But I love this console. It really is my dream video game console. As someone who loved the Switch, as someone who has always preferred Nintendo handhelds to their home consoles, we finally have something that doesn't feel like a compromised vision. It is a true, like, home console experience on the go. And the Switch certainly was already very close to that. Playing games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey in handheld was incredible, but there were compromises there. With where we are with technology and console power and all that, this feels uncompromised to me. It is close enough to my experience playing on PS5 that this is going to be my go-to for almost everything. The only other thing that really bums me out as someone who does also play on PlayStation a lot, come on, Nintendo, it's time. Where are the trophies? That is the one thing, that is the only thing that is holding me back from playing everything on my Switch 2, is no trophies or achievements or something like that. I know they have them in certain games, but I would love some sort of account-wide trophy system like PlayStation and Xbox has that would basically eliminate PlayStation from what I play on, I think, because I just really value having the docked and handheld experience. That is so important to me and how I play games. I like moving around the house, taking it on the go, right? So Switch 2, you need to get a trophy system, but other than that, other than the Wi-Fi issues I've been having, this thing is really nice. I love this console. 2 weeks in, we'll see how I feel in several more years as we get a new revision, a V2, maybe a better battery life. That's one thing too. The battery life isn't great, but overall, I've been having a blast with this console. I love how comfortable it is. I love how seamless it is. Of course, that was already already there for the Switch with the dock, but also the games. The games run so well. The software lineup is incredible. We're getting DK Bonanza a month after Mario Kart World, which admittedly, I was a little lukewarm on Mario Kart at first. The more I play it, the more I love it. I'll have a full review for that up in the coming days once I 100% the open world. I want to get that all done for you first, but I'm loving this console. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. How do you feel about the Nintendo Switch 2? Are you as glowing on it as I am? Do you have more issues with it? I would love to hear what you think down there. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch collecting, but also reviews for the hardware, but also the games and the unboxings. As always, yesterday I posted the Kinetsugami unboxing. You guys seem to really like that, so I appreciate the support there. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. Check out my Nintendo news channel at BoTalksGames. And until next time, folks, peace.